You're listening to The Mark Cox Show. Find everything Mark Cox at 971talk.com/Cox.
We agree on the need to stabilize the insurance markets that are collapsing under Obamacare as well, and policies contained in the discussion draft will implement stabilization policies so we can bring financial certainty to insurance markets and hope to Americans who face the possibility of limited or zero options next year under Obamacare.
There's Mitch McConnell when he rolled out his draft plan this morning on health care and was immediately attacked all over the place by Dick Durbin and Chuck Schumer there on the floor of the Senate. We're hoping to get some more details on that because it is a draft. I've got the draft here in front of me, but I wanted to check in with Jared Halpern, who's been covering this story for the Fox News Channel, on what the reaction is. And Jared, first of all, I heard Fox report earlier that there might already be 3 Republicans claiming that they are no votes on this.
Well, that's what the rumblings are. Now, again, this is at the stage where, and you saw this play out in the House as well, right? You have a very narrow margin of error here for Republican leadership. There are 52 Senate Republicans. No Democrat's going to vote for this, so they can't lose more than 2. They lose 2. The vice president potentially could come in and break the tie. So 3 would be a death knell. We will see if that is the case, how these statements of opposition are worded. Sometimes these are negotiation tools, right? I won't support this unless X, Y, and Z is met. And so it is a way to try and get more of what they want into a measure. But remember, before this process even started, you had folks like Rand Paul and Mike Lee and some others, particularly on the conservative side, who were dissatisfied with anything that they felt would be sort of like an Obamacare light or didn't go far enough in the repeal effort. And one of the things that this Senate bill does that's different from the House bill is while both of them scale back that Medicaid expansion, for instance, the Senate bill does it much slower. Part of that is a way to try and get at the concerns that were addressed by other senators, Republican senators, that the House bill maybe did it too quickly. And so much like the House had to try and find that balance, between satisfying enough on the right and enough in the center. Mitch McConnell's going to have to do the same thing in the Senate with far less wiggle room than Paul Ryan had.
Looks like they're also maybe throwing more money at the short-term stabilization fund. Is that correct?
That is what this would indicate as well. Yeah. Right. Now, again, a lot of this is going to be the devil's in the details, right?
Sure.
And that's what you've heard from a lot of Republicans who left this. Remember, a lot of Republicans saw this for the very first time at 9:30 this morning. So as they left this closed-door briefing with leadership, they seemed, I don't want to say optimistic. I mean, but the sense was nobody was very committed one way or the other, right? You heard sort of across the gamut from people leaving this that, this is probably a good first step. We're excited to move forward in this process, but we're going to have to spend the weekend learning more about it. And so when you look at things like how are these tax credits different than the House tax credits, how is that stabilization fund paid for? Things like that are going to be very, very important, especially when you're dealing with the margin that Republicans are dealing with.
Yeah. They also were adding some money in here to make sure that high-cost and low-income individuals can purchase health insurance. That's the long-term state innovation fund, sort of like the high-risk pool. But there were also some concerns about Democrats and critics had said that the House version of it was going to mean older people who are more likely to have a limited income, we're going to have to pay more for insurance. Strikes me they've thrown some money in here as well to try to ease that burden.
It also seems like the formula is a little different. I think I'm trying to remember what the final House product was, but a lot of it was sort of the formula was based on age. And I think there is an aspect of the Senate bill where the formula is based not only on age, in other words, as you get older, obviously your medical costs tend to go up, but also it would be tied to income as well. And so these are different stabilization formulas, again, that a lot of these senators are going to want to take an awful close look at. And another sort of wrench that was thrown into this was we thought that the Congressional Budget Office might release its report on this bill tomorrow because Senate leadership, Republican leadership, had sort of been giving them bits and pieces of it as they went along. CBO today said they are unlikely to have a score ready before early next week. The plan for Mitch McConnell, at least, and other Republican leaders, was to have this voted on before the end of next week. So that delay from the CBO may delay that timeline. We'll see. If they get the report on Monday, it's not unlike, they could probably still vote Thursday or Friday. But again, we're talking about a pretty tight deadline if they really do intend to get this voted on before the July 4th recess.
Yeah, you don't want to bring it to a vote if you don't have the votes, because we know what happens when that happens in front of what happened to the House.
Saying, listen, we want to see the CBO. This CBO score is going to be important to enough Republicans that it matters.
Yeah, I guess so. Even though they never seem to agree with what it says. I mean, I don't know if that's.
No, you're right. But for some, they want to see it, particularly when you talk about what's the impact for insurance and what's the impact for premiums. Remember, the House bill, premiums did go down in the long run, but there was an initial spike in the short run. There were also concerns about what it meant for the insurance marketplace with the number of people who potentially might not have insurance or choose not to buy insurance, and what that would do for risk pools. Because when you get rid, as this Senate bill does and the House bill does, of the individual mandate, the requirement to buy insurance, it obviously raises questions about, having enough, young, healthy people, whatever you want to call it, into the pool to bring down costs for higher risk folks. And that's what that stabilization fund you're talking about is about. And that's what this sort of in the House bill that compromise dealt with, adding federal money to those state pools for states that choose to open something like that, choose to opt out of some of these insurance requirements.
When the president was asked about this morning, he said still some negotiating to go. So I agree with you. I think they threw this out there and they wanted to see who would immediately stand up and say no, and then negotiate a little bit. So.
Senate Democrats are also having a good time with the president. From our classmate that it was mean.
Yeah, I heard that. Heartless.
You want something less mean. So,
Jared Halpern,
that test.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, Fox News Radio's Jared Halpern joining us there. He's had only about as much time as I have to try to dig through this thing. Here's what I think's interesting, and it's as predictable as the fact that the sun will come up tomorrow and the humidity will be 98% in St. Louis this summer. This is how predictable this is. Chuck Schumer, and I'll find the bites for you because we probably have them already. In fact, I think I have a little montage put together of what the Democrats are going to claim that this bill is going to do to the American people. That it's going to kill people on Medicaid. It's going to cut Medicaid. People are going to be miserable. But I want to play something for you. I'll play that bite for you, but I want to play something else because I think this